Breastfeeding has massive advantages for the mother and the child, and as healthcare professionals we should encourage breastfeeding as much as we possibly can. And this talk gives us some background into the anatomy and physiology of the breast, with specific reference to milk production, the process which is referred to as lactation. The breasts are composed of skin on the outside and connective tissue. Under this there's adipose tissue and mammary glands, which are the milk producing structures. Now, immediately under the skin is a superficial fascia of connective tissue which provides additional support. The mammary glands are composed of clusters of alveoli, which are arranged in systems of secretory lobules. So it's actually the mammary glands that are producing the milk, arranged in these systems of secretory lobules. And these lobules are connected to a system of mammary ducts, lined with columnar epithelium, which transport milk from the glands where the milk is produced towards the nipple. The ductile system from the lobules converge into 15 to 20 lactiferacious sinuses and ducts. Each lactiferacious duct opens immediately onto the nipple. The combination of a system of lobules and mammary ducts, together with their associated connective and adipose tissues, forms a lobe of the breast. A breast is therefore composed of a radial arrangement of lobes. In this diagram we see the attached portion of the breast normally extends from the level of the second or third rib down to the sixth rib. The chest wall is composed of the ribs and intercostal muscles. Overlying this is the pectoral muscle, specifically the pectoralis major muscle. Deep fascia overlies the muscle. Above this is the submammary space, which allows the breast a degree of movement relative to the chest wall. This allows the breast to move a little depending on the overall position of the body. Suspensory ligaments divide the lobes and provide support. External support is supplied by the superficial fascia just underneath the skin. Milk is formed from the alveoli in the lobules, which drain milk into the mammary ducts. After passing through a lactiferacious sinus, milk is expressed through a lactiferacious duct onto the surface of the nipple. Now, within a breast there are a series of suspensory ligaments which surround the lobes and extend to the skin surface. The sensory ligaments are arranged in a radial pattern like the spokes of a wheel. They are particularly prominent in the upper areas of the breast and provide support for the weight of the breast tissue. In addition to providing support, they form divisions between the lobes of the breast. Carcinoma of the breast causes tension on these ligaments, leading to pitting of the skin, which is one of the signs to look for in breast cancer. And suspensory ligaments also become looser with increasing age, or as a result of repeated strain, as might be caused by running or jogging. This is why breasts should be supported during high impact exercise or sports. So in this diagram we see a breast is composed of a radial arrangement of lobes. And these lobes are composed of clusters of mammary lobules and ducts with associated adipose tissue and connective tissue. Mammary ducts drain milk from the clusters of lobules into a widened area of milk duct called a lactiferacious sinus. These allow for a reservoir of milk during lactation. A lactiferous duct transports milk from a lactiferous sinus onto the surface of the nipple. Suspensory ligaments divide the lobes and provide support. And most breasts are composed of 15 to 20 lobes, but we've only illustrated 6 of the lobes in this diagram. So let's think about the breast ductile system. So the breast milk is going to be made in a series of lobules, and these lobules have a large surface area because they are surrounded by alveoli. So there's one lobule there with the alveoli. Here's another lobule with the alveoli. And these join to form mammary ducts. And there's other lobules with their alveoli also producing milk going into these mammary ducts. Then as we get near the nipple, there's a much wider area. The ductile system widens out into a sinus, a lactiferous sinus. Then this carries on via a lactiferous duct, and that drains into the nipple. So let's just clarify this a little bit. This is a lobule here. This is a lobule. So these are the lobules, and these are the alveoli. The alveoli producing the milk. The milk's draining into the lobules and then into these secondary tubules and then into these larger mammary ducts. And then into this lactiferous sinus. Lactiferous sinus. Lact, of course, means to do with milk. And then on into the lactiferous duct. And it's the lactiferous duct that drains into the nipple. And this is what is basically forming a lobe of the breast. So there's going to be suspensory ligaments here holding this in place, the suspensory ligaments. So we see that this lobe of the breast is composed of these lobules and the alveoli. Now the milk producing units, of course, are glandular. Some people say they're modified sweat glands or sebaceous glands. But the point is they are producing the milk. Passing down, the milk's going to be stored in the lactiferous sinus before going out into the nipple. And so there's going to be numerous lactiferous sinuses draining into the nipple. Now, what's actually happening here? If we think about this in more detail, let's think about, let's imagine that this is one of the alveoli. So we have the milk producing cells here, the glandular milk producing cells with their own nucleus. So these are actually producing the milk. And once produced, if we relate that to this diagram, the milk has to go from the lobule, or from the alveoli into the lobule, into these secondary tubules to go down into the lactiferous sinus. So what we actually have here is we have these milk producing cells, the glandular cells. But surrounding those, we have another type of cell. So this epithelium is 2 layers thick. There's another type of cell. So these are the epithelial cells here. Actually producing the milk. But another type of cell around about the outside of these are called myoepithelial cells. And these myoepithelial cells are contractile. They will contract. And it's the same situation in these secondary tubules. So if we imagine a secondary tubule, that's the lumen of the secondary tubule there. Then we have a layer of luminal epithelial cells here, lining the lumen of the duct, numerous luminal epithelial cells. And then again, round about the outside of these, we have the myoepithelial cells. Now, when the infant suckles, sensory impulses, particularly from the nipples, or from the nipple, will travel to the spinal nerves up to the hypothalamus. So sensory impulses from here go up to the hypothalamus. Now you might remember that in the hypothalamus it's connected to the pituitary gland via a stalk. This would be the posterior pituitary gland. The posterior lobe of the pituitary gland, the neurohypophysis. Here we would have the anterior lobe of the pituitary gland as well. So nerve impulses from the nipple go to the hypothalamus. And what we have in the hypothalamus are the neurosecretory neurons. So the posterior hypothalamus is the neurohypophysis, it's neurological tissue. So cells in there will go down into the posterior lobe of the pituitary gland. And because these cells are neuronal, they work by nerve impulses, there'll be firing of nerve impulses. But the key thing about these cells is they release the hormone. And the hormone, of course, is oxytocin. And the oxytocin circulates in the blood, and it's the oxytocin that stimulates the contraction of the myoepithelial cells. So what that means is that the milk is going to be produced in the alveoli and the lobules, but they are going to contract, and the secondary tubules are going to contract, putting the milk into the mammary ducts and the lactoferraceous sinus at a reasonably high pressure, 10 to 20 millimeters of mercury. But the system is only pressurized when the baby suckles on the nipple, because it's the suckling that sends the impulses to the hypothalamus. So when the baby suckles, the impulses go to the hypothalamus, the oxytocin is released, and that pressurizes the system by the oxytocin stimulating the contraction of the myoepithelial cells. So all of these lactoferraceous ducts, milk will be coming from the various lobes of the breast onto the nipple. So when the infant suckles, the system is already pressurized, and it's not hard work for the infant to suckle because of the process of the oxytocin stimulating the letdown of milk. And as well as that, oxytocin has numerous other effects. It's involved in love and bonding between the mother and the infant, for example. So that's just a quick review of the anatomy involved, the alveoli, the lobule, the mammary ducts, the lactiferous sinus, the lactiferous duct and the nipple. So we see that the breast is made up of 15 to 20 lobes. The lobes are made up of lobules and the lobules are made up of the alveoli. But with the two layers of epithelium, the secretory epithelium and the contractile epithelium, this whole system is pressurized to facilitate this process of breastfeeding and lactation. And of course, as healthcare professionals, we must always encourage breastfeeding for many, many positive reasons for the mother and the infant. In addition to the superficial fascia and suspensory ligaments, breasts are supported by the underlying pectoral muscles. If these are well developed, the breasts will be supported higher on the chest wall. And these pectoral muscles lie over the upper part of the chest and are covered by a sheath of tough fibrous tissue called the deep fascia. Between the base of the breast and the deep fascia of the pectoral muscle is a layer of loose connective tissue called the submammary space, which allows a degree of breast movement over the deep pectoral fascia. Surrounding the nipple is a pigmented area called the areola, which contains numerous sebaceous glands. There are also sebaceous glands in the nipple. The sebum produced by the sebaceous glands helps to lubricate the nipple during suckling. Before a woman has been pregnant, the areola is usually pink, less so in dark-skinned individuals. But after the first pregnancy, it changes to brown and remains so for the rest of the woman's life. Breasts are not round as is often supposed, but there is a tail of tissue which extends towards the axilla. Variations in breast size in non-lactating women is largely determined by the amount of adipose tissue that they contain. Breast development and enlargement is stimulated at puberty under the influence of estrogen, released during the monthly sexual ovarian cycle. High levels of estrogen are secreted by the placenta during pregnancy as well. These high estrogen levels cause the lobular and ductile system of the breast to grow and branch in preparation for milk production, leading to an increased size of the breast during pregnancy. In the later stages of pregnancy, progesterone leads to further development and maturation of the breast lobules. During late pregnancy and lactation, most of the mass of the breast is composed of this highly developed system of secretory lobules. When not pregnant or breastfeeding, the mammary lobules and ducts account for about 50% of the mass of the breast tissue, the remainder being mostly adipose tissue. In this diagram, we see an individual breast lobule. During lactation, milk is produced in the secretory epithelium lining the alveoli and milk ducts. Once formed, this milk buds from the surface of the individual cells into the lumen. And this process is continuous for the duration of breastfeeding. Suckling of the infant on the breast causes hormonal contraction of the surrounding myoepithelial cells to facilitate milk secretion. And the arrows on this diagram indicate the direction of the flow of milk. So during pregnancy, the anterior pituitary gland produces increasing amounts of prolactin, which stimulates the synthesis and secretion of milk. During breastfeeding, nerve signals from the nipple travel to the hypothalamus, stimulating ongoing prolactin secretion, the hypothalamus stimulating the pituitary gland. This is why breasts will continue to produce milk as long as a child continues to suckle, although the volumes of milk produced will reduce after about 8 months. Milk is secreted continuously into the alveoli of the breasts. But to convey this milk from the site of production through the ductile system to the nipple requires the action of another hormone called oxytocin. Suckling causes oxytocin to be secreted from the posterior pituitary gland. In the breasts, oxytocin causes the contraction of the myoepithelial cells which surround the alveoli and mammary ducts. These contractile cells have fibres which surround the alveoli to aid overall contraction, causing milk to be ejected into the ductile system at a pressure of about 10 to 20 millimeters of mercury. As a result of this pressure in the ductile system, the baby can suckle and suck out milk with minimal effort. It's almost as if the child is being somewhat force-fed with the milk. And this process is called milk ejection or letdown. Regulation of letdown by oxytocin means the baby will receive large amounts of milk within 30 to 60 seconds of starting to suckle. It also means the breasts do not dribble milk in between feeds, or it reduces that anyway. Mixed in with the milk, the breasts secrete many types of antibodies, as well as neutrophils and macrophages. And these all protect the baby against potentially lethal infections.